In college football, it's not very often that you see multiple NFL players on the same side of the ball, and it's probably even more rare to see multiple NFL players in the same position room. But what makes it even more special is when you have multiple high-level NFL players in the same position room. Position rooms that have been loaded with NFL high-level talent in college football. So the first position group that we have to check out is the 2001 Miami running back room, which featured Clinton Portis, Frank Gore, and Willis McGahee. This three-headed monster right here led the show for, in my opinion, the greatest college football team ever. In 2001, Clinton Portis was the lead back, having over 220 attempts, 1,200 yards, averaged 5.5 yards per carry, and had 10 touchdowns. Frank Gore, on the other hand, had the second most yards, having 562 yards, 62 attempts, and 9.1 yards per carry. Willis McGahee had the third most yards, having 67 attempts for 314 yards with 4.7 yards per carry and 3 touchdowns. These three running backs had a dominant rushing game, averaging over 204 yards per game and 5.3 yards per carry. Their dominant rushing game allowed Miami to have the third-ranked scoring offense in the country, averaging 43.2 points per game, which, by help of the Miami defense, allowed them to a 12-0 record to be the best team in college football that year. 2001 was Portis' last year in college, so he went to the NFL in the 2002 draft and was selected in the second round with the 51st pick by the Denver Broncos. As a rookie, Portis came into the NFL a beast. First 2 years, over 1,500 yards, won Offensive Rookie of the Year with the Denver Broncos. After his first 2 years, he was then traded for Champ Bailey in one of the biggest blockbuster trades in NFL history to the then-known Washington Redskins. And Portis will have a good career with Washington, having 3 seasons over 1,500 yards and having 6 seasons over 1,200 yards. He finished his career with 9,923 yards, 75 touchdowns. That's a good career to me. After the 2001 season, Willis McGahee became a more impactful player during his redshirt sophomore season in 2002, where he rushed for 282 attempts, 1,753 yards, 6.2 yards per carry, and had 28 rushing touchdowns, which allowed him to win Big East Offensive Player of the Year. He was a consensus All-American and first-team All-Big East in 2002 and helped lead Miami to the national championship against Ohio State. However, in that game, he was injured and tore his ACL, MCL, and PCL, where they eventually lost to Ohio State in the national championship game. However, McGahee was so dominant that season that he went in the first round with the 23rd pick. He was selected by the Buffalo Bills and didn't play at all in 2003 due to the injury, but he came back in 2004, had over 1,100 yards, and then again had over 1,200 yards in 2005. Throughout his NFL career with Buffalo, Baltimore, Denver, and Cleveland, he was a pretty damn good back. Had over 4 seasons with over 1,000 yards, and he had 8,474 career yards with 65 rushing touchdowns. That's a good career in my eyes. He also made 2 Pro Bowls, one in 2007 and 2011. Out of all 3 of these backs, Frank Gore had the least impressive college resume, but by far he has the most impressive NFL resume. As a true freshman in 2001, Frank Gore lit up the country. He was Big East Freshman of the Year. He averaged 9 yards per carry. That's unbelievable for a running back. Then 2002 happens, spring practice comes, and he tears his ACL. And before he tore his ACL, he beat out Willis McGahee to be the starting running back. And back then, ACL injuries aren't what they are like today. Back then, it really took a lot from Frank Gore's explosiveness. And to nowadays, it's just, you can tear an ACL and be back to 100% the next year. So Gore did come back the next year in 2003 after the torn ACL, and he played in 5 games. In the first 4 games, he started off strong. He was dominating the competition, and then in the last game, he tore his ACL again. So in 2004, which is Miami's first year in the ACC, Frank Gore had 945 rushing yards, 4.8 yards per attempt, and 8 touchdowns. So after the 2004 season, Gore was drafted in the 3rd round with the 65th pick by the San Francisco 49ers, and he became almost immediately an impact player, while not even being the starter his rookie year. So after his rookie year in 2006, Gore became one of the best backs in football and would become an All-Pro with having over 1,600 yards and 8 touchdowns with over 485 receiving yards. And this would be the start of Frank Gore's great career, having over 9 seasons with over 1,000 yards and having them 16,000 rushing yards, which is 3rd all time, 81 touchdowns. That's unbelievable numbers for someone, especially that had 2 torn ACLs. Another impressive college football room was the 2018 Ole Miss wide receiver room. This room featured A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, and Elijah Moore. Not to mention, they had an NFL tight end, Dawson Knox, too. In 2018, A.J. Brown was the only receiver to go over 1,000 yards, where he had 1,320 yards with 6 touchdowns. And DK Metcalf only had 569 receiving yards, which is why some people probably was questioning his ability to play in the NFL, even though I believe he wasn't really used right in college. He was used solely as a deep threat at Ole Miss, which is why his production wasn't up there, why he only had 26 catches his last year. And for Elijah Moore, on the other hand, Elijah had 36 catches for 398 yards and 2 touchdowns. And you might be thinking to yourself, with all this talent, how good was this team? Well, they went 5-7. A.J. Brown was picked in the 2nd round, pick 51 in the 2019 NFL draft, and he's had a great career so far. You know, he made the Pro Bowl in 2020, the All-Rookie team in 2019, and has been a reliable #1 receiver so far in the NFL. He was drafted by the Tennessee Titans, played there for 3 seasons. They didn't want to pay him his money, so they traded him to Philadelphia, where he got a new contract and has been an impact player so far. DK Metcalf was drafted with the 64th pick in the 2nd round of the 2019 NFL draft, and he was an impact player as well. In 2020, he made the Pro Bowl, and he was 2nd team All-Pro. He just got a contract extension from the Seattle Seahawks, and I look forward to seeing him dominate. He's a very exciting player to watch. Big, tall, and fast. Elijah Moore, on the other hand, he was drafted in the 2021 draft, 2nd round, pick 34, highest drafted out of all 3 of them. Probably had the best college season out of all 3 of them as well, including A.J. Brown. Set the school reception records in 1 season. As a rookie, he was the New York Jets receiving leader, and so far, he's had a decent start to 2022. The next position group we got to take a look at is the 2018 Alabama quarterback room. It's not very often you see 3 different quarterbacks to the NFL starting quarterbacks in 1 college quarterback room. These college quarterbacks started together in 2017 and were teammates for 2 different years. In 2016, Jalen Hurts was the starting quarterback for Alabama. He led them to a national championship where they eventually lost to Clemson and Deshaun Watson. In 2017, Jalen Hurts led Alabama once again to the national championship where they faced up against Georgia. And if you know anything about the Georgia defenses, they're hard to run on. So Jalen Hurts was struggling in the game through the passing game. So Nick Saban at halftime decided to put Tua Tagovailoa in the game. And we all know the story about what happened. Tua Tagovailoa comes in, throws the game-winning touchdown in overtime. And next year, Tua beats out Jalen Hurts throughout fall camp and in spring practice. And Tua becomes a starting quarterback and has a great season for Alabama. Tua leads Alabama to a national championship against Clemson, and they get blown out due to Trevor Lawrence and the Clemson defense. After that season, Jalen Hurts transfers to Oklahoma, becomes a starting Oklahoma quarterback, and at the same time, Tua Tagovailoa, he's a starting quarterback for Alabama, but he ends up getting hurt. And then comes in Mac Jones, and Mac Jones played well throughout the end of that year. And then in 2020, Mac Jones, he had his first year as a starting quarterback for Alabama, and he pretty much was the best single-season quarterback in Alabama history. Tua will go on to be drafted with the 5th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, where at first, he started off, had some struggles going on, but right now it's his 3rd year, and it seems like he's putting it all together. Jalen Hurts ended up After going to Alabama, transferred to Oklahoma and was a Heisman finalist, which allowed him to be drafted in the second round with the 53rd pick in the draft. He was selected by the Philadelphia Eagles, where he eventually replaced Carson Wentz and had an up and down first 2 years, even though they made it to the playoffs his second year. But so far in his third year, he won NFC Player of the Month for the first month of the season, and he's been playing lights out so far. Mac Jones, after his impressive, historic, record-setting season in 2020, he was drafted with the 15th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft to the New England Patriots. And with the Patriots, he had a very good first season. He was a Pro Bowl replacement, and he made the NFL Top 100 list. So far in the second season, he's been having the struggles. He's been up and down, and I think that's more towards the offensive coordinator and the situation that he's in with the Patriots. But I think he'll figure it out and have a good season and continue on to have a good career. The next position room that we got to talk about that had elite NFL talent was the 2017 Georgia Bulldogs running back room that had Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, and DeAndre Swift. In 2017, Nick Chubb led the way with 1,345 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns, 6 yards per carry, while Sony Michel had 12,000 rushing yards, 7.9 yards per carry, and 16 touchdowns. DeAndre Swift was the third leading back, but he still had a good season as well. 618 yards, 7.6 yards per carry with 3 touchdowns. All three of these players were impact players during their time at Georgia. Nick Chubb was drafted in the 2018 draft in the second round with his 35th pick. Ever since Chubb has been in the league, he's been one of the best running backs in the NFL and arguably the best in the NFL. Through his first 4 seasons, he's averaged over 5 yards per carry in each season. And the only season that he didn't have over 1,000 yards was his rookie year, where he had 996 yards. He's off to a great start so far in 2022, and if he keeps at this pace, in my opinion, he'll be in the Hall of Fame. He was drafted by the New England Patriots, and he's had 2 seasons over 900 yards so far in his career. He hasn't been as impressive as Nick Chubb has been in the NFL, but Sony Michel has one thing that Nick Chubb does not have, and that's 2 Super Bowl rings. He won his first championship during the 2018 season with the New England Patriots as a rookie, and he won his second championship in the 2021 season with the Los Angeles Rams. He is now a part of the Los Angeles Chargers here in the 2022 season. Just like Nick Chubb, DeAndre Swift was selected in the second round with the 35th pick, but he was drafted in the 2020 NFL Draft. So far in his NFL career, DeAndre Swift has been a dual threat nightmare for defenses. He's a very good runner, and he's a very good receiver as well. In the 2021 season, he had over 1,000 scrimmage yards, and in my opinion, he's the best Lions running back since Barry Sanders. The next position room that we got to take a look at is the 2000 Miami Hurricanes wide receiver room, which featured Andre Johnson, Reggie Wayne, and Santana Moss. Now, these guys might not have the best receiving numbers compared to other receiving groups here, but they had the talent for sure. Miami just was more of a run-based team. Santana Moss had 748 yards, Reggie Wayne had 755 yards, and Andre Johnson really wasn't featured that much, but he had 57 yards that year. NFL scouts knew that these guys were legit, which is why all 3 of these guys ended up being first-round picks. Andre Johnson ended up being the best out of all of them, and Andre Johnson was drafted in the 2003 NFL Draft with the 3rd pick. He ended up making 4 All-Pro teams, 2 first team, 2 second teams, and he was a 7-time Pro Bowler. He led the NFL in catches twice, and he led the NFL in receiving yards twice. Before J.J. Watt came, he was the greatest player in Houston Texans history. He had a career with over 1,000 catches, 14,000 receiving yards, and 70 touchdowns, and I think he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. In his career, Reggie Wayne made 6 Pro Bowls, 3 All-Pros, 1 first team, 2 second teams, and he was a Super Bowl champion. Reggie Wayne ended up with 1,000 catches, 14,000 receiving yards, and 82 touchdowns. With his career resume, Reggie Wayne might end up in Canton as well. Santana Moss, He was also a first-round pick in the 2001 NFL Draft. He was drafted by the New York Jets 16th overall. After 4 good seasons with the New York Jets, Santana Moss ended up going to the Washington Redskins, where he came onto the scene. In 2005, he had his only Pro Bowl year, and he made second-team All-Pro as well. Santana Moss had a very underrated career: 732 receptions, 10,283 total yards, and 69 total touchdowns. The next room we gotta look at is the 2018 Alabama running back room with Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs, Damien Harris, and Brian Robinson. At this time, Brian Robinson hasn't played in the NFL yet due to the shooting that he was in Washington, D.C., but he's been a starting running back. He beat out Antonio Gibson in the preseason. So to have 4 starting NFL running backs on a college football team, that's incredible. In 2018, Alabama didn't have a single 1,000-yard rusher because there were too many good running backs on the team. Damien Harris ended up having 876 rushing yards, averaging 5.8 yards per carry and 9 touchdowns, while Najee Harris had 783 rushing yards, averaging 6.7 yards per carry and 4 touchdowns, and Josh Jacobs had 640 yards rushing with 5.3 yards per carry and 11 touchdowns. Brian Robinson Jr. only had 63 attempts for 272 yards, 4.3 yards per carry. Josh Jacobs was drafted with the 24th pick in the first round of the 2019 NFL Draft. Jacobs has had a good career so far with the Raiders, and each year he's been in the NFL, he's had over 1,000 scrimmage yards. Harris was also drafted in the first round with the 24th pick, just like Jacobs. Harris was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's had over 1,600 scrimmage yards in his first year as an NFL starter. He also made the Pro Bowl as a rookie and has shown a lot of promise so far in the 2022 season. Damien Harris was drafted in the 3rd round with the 87th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft by the New England Patriots. Damien Harris would get limited action as his rookie year in the 2019 season, had a decent year in 2020, but he really burst on into the scene in 2021, where he had over 1,000 scrimmage yards for the New England Patriots. Brian Robinson Jr. was drafted in the 3rd round with the 98th pick by the Washington Commanders. So far, he hasn't really played in the NFL yet due to his incident that he was involved in right before the season, but he did beat out Antonio Gibson to be the starting running back as a rookie, and I just think it's very impressive that you have 4 starting NFL running backs in a college football room. The next college football room we have to talk about is the 2003 Auburn Tigers running back room. This running back room featured 2 guys that ended up being top 5 picks in the 2005 NFL Draft and another running back that won 2 Super Bowl championships. In 2003, Cadillac Williams was the lead back for this offense. He had 1,300 rushing yards and 17 rushing touchdowns, while Ronnie Brown had 446 rushing yards for 5 touchdowns, and Brandon Jacobs had the same, 446 yards, but he had 3 touchdowns. Jacobs ended up transferring after the 2003 season. Like I said earlier, all 3 players were drafted in the 2005 NFL Draft. Ronnie Brown ended up being the 2nd pick of the 2005 NFL Draft, drafted by Nick Saban. Brown had a decent career with the Miami Dolphins. He had a 1,000-yard season in 2006, and in 2008 he made the Pro Bowl. Cadillac Williams was drafted with the 5th pick of the first round of the 2005 NFL Draft. Cadillac Williams ended up having a great rookie season, going over 1,000 yards, winning Offensive Rookie of the Year, and made the All-Rookie team. He was never really able to capture that same magic that he had his rookie year, but he played 7 seasons in the National Football League. After Brandon Jacobs left Auburn in 2003, he played for Southern Illinois in 2004, and that was able to get him drafted in the 4th round of the 2005 NFL Draft with the 110th overall pick. He was drafted by the New York Giants, and he was a very impactful player on their 2 Super Bowl runs. Like I said, he's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. He had 2 seasons over 1,000 yards, and I believe that he had the best career out of his 2 counterparts from Auburn.